to Bill Browder. You may know him. He's on this show a lot. He's a longtime Putin critic who's been called Putin's #1 enemy, and Bianna Golodryga, our senior global affairs analyst. So thanks to both of you. Let me start with you, Bill. You know, you hear this analysis. You watched these press conferences yourself today and the readouts, the body language. Was this meeting worth it, or did it elevate Putin without getting anything for that?
This meeting shouldn't have happened. There is nothing that Putin has done to deserve the attention of the most important man in the free world, the U.S. president. Vladimir Putin has been on a tear of malign activity. He's been hacking our pipelines, our meat industry, the elections. He's been invading foreign countries, shooting down passenger planes, cheating in international sports events. He's an international menace. And to be invited to a civilized summit with Biden is just a true gift, as Matthew Chance said. He's going to be basking in the glory back home. And so this was a big mistake to have this summit. There's a lot of people who are suffering under Putin that didn't want to see this happen, and the United States and the free world got nothing out of it. I mean, Bianna, there weren't a lot of deliverables in this meeting. You know, Biden's saying, all right, in 3 to 6 months or a year, let's talk about it. Let's see if the specifics happen. But what we know is, okay, the ambassadors are going back, and that's something they probably had agreed to beforehand, right? We're going to do that. They did talk about next steps on arms control, but the meeting didn't even go as long as they expected, and they had said it would go 3 to 4 hours, but could go longer if it went well. Biden's team had set the expectation this could go even longer. They were hopeful, obviously, but then Biden got asked about why it didn't go very long, and here's that exchange.
Is there a particular reason why the summit lasted only about 3 hours? We know you had maybe allotted 4 to 5 hours. Was there any reason it ran shorter?
The reason it didn't go longer is when the last time two heads of state have spent over 2 hours in direct conversation across the table, going into excruciating detail. You may know of time, I don't. Kind of after 2 hours there, we looked at each other like, okay, what next? What is going to happen next is we're going to be able to look back, look ahead in 3 to 6 months and say, did the things we agreed to sit down and try to work out, did it work?
So Bianna, I mean, 4 to 5 hours is a lot. And again, they said they hoped it could go longer, and then it only went 3. I mean, how could two world leaders with so much to discuss not use up their time?
Well, President Biden said they went into excruciating detail. I would imagine it wasn't on every single subject, in particular the red lines that Vladimir Putin clearly drew, and that was all domestic-based issues, in particular Alexei Navalny, suppression there of the opposition within Russia, and also the human rights abuses that, as Bill said, that we've continued to see time and time again. That takes up a lot of time if you want to go into detail, and that clearly President Putin did not want to go into detail there. He was asked about whether or not they spoke of COVID. They didn't even go into detail about the coronavirus, which is running rampant through Russia once again. Only 12% of the population there has been vaccinated, and they didn't spend much time talking about Belarus. Putin said that they agreed to disagree on that area. So clearly they spent a few hours together, but they did not go in depth the way that President Biden perhaps wanted to go in depth. And to Bill's point, listen, there are many that would argue that this meeting should not have taken place. And you could make the point that if President Biden was going to have a meeting with the G7 once the G8, after Russia, of course, was excluded, why then give Vladimir Putin the platform of having a one-on-one after that? What kind of a punishment is that? Not to mention the fact that they are going to be meeting in October at the G20 in Italy. They could have had a bilat there as well, and it would have come after the Russian parliamentary elections in September. This, of course, giving Putin the opportunity today with this meeting to showcase to Russians at home that the U.S. is once again the boogeyman here.
Very interesting. It's such a great point you make, right? You're the G7 and they've been, taken out of it, and now all of a sudden they get elevated to G1 plus 1. I mean, Bill, Biden was asked about the consequences for Russia if Navalny dies in jail, right? This crucial issue of Alexei Navalny. Here's how he responded to that.
I made it clear to him that I believe the consequences of that would be devastating for Russia. I'll go back to the same point. What do you think happens when he's saying it's not about hurting Navalny, all the stuff he says to rationalize the treatment of Navalny. And then he dies in prison. It's about trust. It's about their ability to influence other nations in a positive way.
So, Bill, does Putin believe that Biden's words are real, that the consequences of Alexei Navalny dying in prison would be devastating for Russia?
I think Putin probably believes that, but what's the other message that Putin got from this? Is that it's okay for what he already did to Navalny. So let's not forget that Putin used a banned nuclear military-grade nerve agent to try to kill Navalny, his main political opponent. He tried to kill him, and he didn't succeed. Navalny survived by the skin of his teeth. He was in coma. He finally came out, and then he bravely came back to Russia, and they arrested him and tortured him in prison. Should there not be a consequence for that? I think there should be, and I think anyone else who's following the Navalny situation thinks there should be. And so for them to say, well, it's okay to do that, but just don't kill him. Well, so they're going to keep him in jail and torture him into perpetuity with that message.
Well, this is a really great point about how far the goalpost has moved when you explain it that way. You know, Bianna, Biden also threatened consequences for Putin if these cyber attacks continue. Cyber attacks that, of course, Putin won't acknowledge. His response was to list other countries that do cyber attacks. And Biden said that not only did he say no more cyber attacks, that he was very specific to Putin about where cyber attacks, if they occur, would be technically off limits. I don't know what that means, but let me just play it for you.
I talked about the proposition that certain critical infrastructure should be off limits to attack, period, by cyber or any other means. I gave them a list. If I'm not mistaken, I don't have it in front of me, 16 specific entities, 16 defined as critical infrastructure under U.S. policy, from the energy sector to our water systems.
Bianna, obviously a Russian entity just attacked the largest pipeline on the eastern coast of the United States. Does Putin take that seriously?
Well, it was interesting to hear President Biden say that he asked, hypothetically, of Putin how he would feel if one of Russia's pipelines was attacked as well. And Putin said something along the lines of, yeah, that would be something really serious. Look, President Biden made clear that he didn't issue any threats in these meetings, but I think comments like that send a message that Vladimir Putin can appreciate. And I'm not sure how one could interpret that as naive as much as that's President Biden setting the parameters. One thing I don't know if I agree with him on that much is when he said that he doesn't think that Vladimir Putin wants a Cold War. I think what they've come to terms with is that both don't want a hot war. But I think it does benefit Putin to continue somewhat of a Cold War and have this tension with the United States. His focus is on what's happening domestically in his own country, not necessarily what the West is doing. Would he like sanctions lifted? Sure. But that's not the end all that he's looking for right now.
All right, Bianna, Bill, I appreciate you both. Thank you so much.